Hi everyone. So I'll just quickly go over um, version 1.15 that was released 10 days ago, um, and then also maybe discuss a few of the commits since then. Um, so yeah, my aim was to make releases every couple of months, and this one was maybe 2 weeks late, but that's not too bad. Um, so the main features here, I guess, because it's only been about 2 months between releases, there's not as many commits, which is nice. Makes it easier to make a release and test things, and also write the release notes. Um, and the main headline of this release was the ESP32 port using CMake instead of traditional Make, and adding S2 support. ESP32 S2 support, very initial support for that, but it works with USB. And then there were also quite a few new features and bug fixes and additions to the RP2040 port. There was also there was a lot of work with CMake. So the Zephyr port as well switched to full CMake instead of being a hybrid between CMake and Make. And so there's 3 ports now: ESP32, RP2, and Zephyr, which use CMake, and they all use it in the same way. So yeah, whether or not you like CMake, you've got to live with it for those 3 ports. And as part of that, CMake now supports user C modules, and it's getting back to parity of what we had before. Um, One thing I guess that I've highlighted here is there was a bug in in integer division for long division of big numbers. Certain numbers, when you divided them, would take a long time and give you the wrong answer, and that was fixed. So, and unfortunately, when you've got a piece of code running, you don't know what numbers are wrong. So it's a pretty serious bug. But I think it was quite rare when it was hit, because you had to have very special. It was like 2 to the n plus 1 divided by 2 to the n minus 1 was one of the cases that it hit it. And it was an overflow in the carry when doing long division. So that's fixed. And a few other things like another fix for regular expressions, that regular expressions are compiled to a little mini bytecode, and if that bytecode sort of is too big and jumps can only be 256 bytes, or I think 128 bytes long, and if you have too big regular expressions, it would crash, but now it just raises an exception. So maybe in the future we can extend regular expressions so they can be much longer. But for the moment, you have to live with short regular expressions. Well, by short, I mean, it depends what you're doing. We added thread safe flag so that you can connect async IO with interrupts. The ESP32 had a few other things, the non-volatile storage added. And as mentioned, S2 support with USB. And that will be improved in the next few weeks with help from Sion. And RP2 port had lots of Python features added to bring it up to parity with the other big ports like STM32 and ESP32. Fat file system, so you can use external SD card. Random, so Robert HH on GitHub did a lot of work making random work properly to get it actually random, and that was really great. Also, you can change the frequency of the chip of the CPU. More additions for UART, also by Robert HH, who did a lot of work on that. And USB reliability, there was some problems with USB on the RP2040, which there's a workaround which was enabled, and another minor fix for suspend mode, I think. So that should be more reliable for certain USB hubs. STM32 usually sees lots of changes, but there was not that much this time. Lots of board configuration options to customize your board, like things to do around entry and exit and reset and running code. LP UART support by Chris, and some bug fixes for the STM32 WB55 Bluetooth, which I discussed a bit last week. last month when we were here. So we found 2 fixes there which did improve things a lot and maybe have worked around the bug, but
Let's not jinx it.
yet to be determined. And yeah, so then there's a big list of changes here, but you can browse that yourself in your own time if you're interested. So yeah, I'm pretty happy that got to have that release in on time, and hopefully the next one as well. So that would be good if we can have a 2-month release cycle and keep the changes sort of short and sweet. But since then, even in the last 10 days, there was already quite a lot of... hang on, I've gone to that version. Right. I want to go back to master. Okay, and I've forgotten how do you look at a list of commits again in Git Hub?
The 12,000.
The 20 hours? No, the 12,000. Ah, that one. It's a lot of commits. Okay, so since it was released, there's been what's been interesting then. This one from here. So a long time ago, there was a big discussion about adding .error to exceptions, and that's been added now in a minimal way. So you can use except.error to get your OS error number. So the change was actually very small. It's just this change here, and yeah, improves compatibility with CPython. There's a lot of documentation and tests there. How do I go back? There we go. Also, a very nice addition, I think, Dave Hylands pointed me to this, that now PyBoard will open things in exclusive mode, serial ports, so that if you try and open 2 PyBoards at once, they don't try and access the same port. It'll warn you, or it'll raise an exception if you try and do that. That's actually really quite helpful, because a lot of the time you have one serial port and you try and open or run a script on the same serial port, and things just go all wrong and you don't understand why until you realize that you're accessing it from 2 different terminals or something. And improvement to SD card, lots of small little things going on here. And then I added this option just recently to build with no error messages at all. So there's now four ways to build error messages. You can have none, terse, normal, or detailed. So none. This new none one was added. You'd use this only for cases where you really ran out of memory flash. But it saves about just over 3K of flash if you enable it. And so the most minimal port that we build, the bare ARM port, it now builds in about in this much size, 57,900 bytes, and that doesn't include a REPL, but it does include the compiler, and it executes a few demo strings. So that's pretty small for a full sort of, well, it's not a full Python, but it's still a pretty functional Python compiler and runtime. Anyway, I think that's about it. There's a few other minor things here, but there's still lots coming up, and hopefully PWM will be standardized in the next release. That's one of the main things I want to do, fix that up. Yeah, so thanks for listening, and yeah, see you on GitHub and the forums. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for your efforts.
Discourse, yeah.